What's up, guys? Today we're over here at our Oakmont project and getting ready to build another house. So this lot is about 9,000 square feet. And we're getting ready to build a 4-bed, 3-bath, roughly 1,750 square foot, 2-story spec home. If you're new here, my name is Corey Fields Jr., builder, investor, developer out here in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, what's interesting about this project is it's not the only project we're building on this street. Right next door, this house right here is getting ready to hit the market next weekend. Just looking at these two lots, they're basically the same project, right? We got similar lots, similar plans, similar acquisition timeline. We bought them, a couple weeks apart, yet this one's 5 months behind, which brings up a pretty obvious question. Why is that? Now, the reason for this delay, it wasn't permitting, wasn't financing, wasn't schedule delays. Looking back on it, there was one decision that we made that saved us months of time. And if we had got that decision wrong, there's a very good chance that we would not even be building this house this year. Now, what I'm about to show you is one of the biggest misconceptions that investors have about real estate development. When we bought this lot, there were roughly 25 to 30 truckloads of dirt sitting on it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured we'd haul it off, clean up the lot, and move on. Turns out that dirt created 3 completely different problems. The first problem being permitting risk. How does a pile of dirt create permitting risk? Well, first, the dirt changed the topography of the lot, which means the survey wasn't showing the actual lot, it was showing the lot plus 30 truckloads of dirt. Now, imagine designing a house around conditions that aren't actually going to exist. That's where things start to get a little iffy. If we move forward using that survey, now we're asking the city to review a version of the lot that's about to change. And that creates questions. Questions create comments, and comments create delays. Which means they'll start asking for solutions to problems that won't exist once that dirt gets removed. Those are conversations that simply don't need to be had, which ultimately then leads to more revisions and more delays. And now we've got permitting risk. But that wasn't the only issue. The second problem was the arborist. Now, how does dirt create an arborist problem? Well, all that dirt was piled up against these trees. And when you bury the base of a tree for years, that tree starts declining. Now, if we move forward with permitting, the arborist is going to have to come out and review the site. Here's where things get a little tricky. As far as the city knows, we own the lot. They don't know who dumped the dirt. They just know the trees are being impacted. And that opens the door to fines, tree prescriptions, and a whole bunch of other crazy fees. All from problems that we didn't create, but we're now responsible for. And of course, more conversations, more reviews, more delays, and now we got arborist risk. And to give you guys some more context, the city of Atlanta does not play about the trees. We had another site where the tree guys actually cut down the wrong tree, and they fined us $5,000. They hit us upside the head for $5,000 for a tree. Now on this lot, I can only imagine what those fines would look like for all those trees, right? They could hit us for some $10,000 for all these trees. And then on top of that, they probably would have made us cut them all down as well. So the trees can get expensive real quick. But even if we solve those 2 problems, we still have to get the dirt out. Because regardless of what happens with permitting and regardless of what happens with the arborist, that dirt still has to come out at some point in order for us to put a house on the lot. And that sounds simple until you start looking at the condition of the lot. That dirt had been sitting there collecting water for years. It was constantly wet and muddy, which meant we couldn't just show up with a machine and start moving dirt. We'd need a solid window of good weather so everything can dry out as much as possible. And once we got that weather, now we'd need to line up equipment, trucks, an operator, and haul off all that dirt. But all of that has to happen at the same time. The weather, the equipment, the trucks, the operator, everything has to line up. And until that happens, the dirt isn't going anywhere. Now we've got construction risk. These were the risks sitting underneath the surface of this deal, right? The permitting risk, the arborist risk, and the reality of actually getting this lot build ready. Some of that was unavoidable, The dirt still had to come out. We still had to wait on weather. We still had to get equipment on site. We still had to work through all that. But what we could control was how those challenges affected the project. The permit delays, the arborist issues, those were the things that we could get ahead of. And that's where the way you think about a project really starts to matter. Because most people look at a lot and immediately start thinking about the house, right? The plans, the layout, the finish. We didn't. The first question we asked was, what has to happen in order to build a house here without creating unnecessary delays and cost? And once we started asking that question, everything started to fall into place. We were then able to see the path of least resistance. So the first thing that we did was we met with the arborist. Why? Because before we did anything else, we need to establish existing conditions. We needed to document that we didn't create this problem, right? We met with him in person. We said, hey, this is what we're dealing with. We did not do this. We got everything in writing and we got all that squared away so we wouldn't have to face any repercussions later down the line, right? Step 2, then we met with site development. We explained the situation and got approval to remove the dirt because there was no point in designing around conditions that were about to change. And then step 3, once everyone was aligned and on the same page, that dirt came out. And it took us about 2.5, 3 months to get that dirt out of there. Like I said, we were dealing with the weather, schedules. It was an exercise to say the least, but we got it done. So after that dirt came out, we updated the survey. And now we're finally looking at the actual lot and not the lot plus 30 truckloads of dirt. And then finally, step 4, now we can design around reality, not assumptions, not temporary conditions, reality, right? We built our site plan off that updated survey, put our plans together, submitted everything. And then we received our building permit. Notice what we didn't do, right? We didn't rush, we didn't assume, and we didn't advance to the next step until the previous step had proven itself. That's ultimately what got us here. And this is why I wanted to show you this, because if I had just stood on the lot and told you we spent months dealing with dirt, it wouldn't make any sense. But when you zoom out, you realize we were never dealing with dirt. We were dealing with permits, we were dealing with arborists, we were dealing with the weather, we were dealing with scheduling, we were dealing with the timeline. The dirt was just where the story started. Everyone wants to know how to find a lot, how to get financing, how to find a builder, how to make money building and selling homes. But before any of that, you need to understand what you're actually stepping into. Because what happens after you find the lot? How do you evaluate it? How do you navigate permitting? How do you identify risk? How do you assess what has to happen first? And that's where a lot of investors get hurt. Because most people buying their first lot, they aren't thinking about any of this. They're thinking about the house, the profit, the exit. They're not thinking about exactly what has to happen after they buy it. The reality is that the most expensive mistakes in development happen before construction ever even starts. They happen during acquisition, they happen during due diligence, they happen during permitting, they happen when someone advances before the previous step has proven itself. And that's exactly what could have happened on this project. Not because the lot was bad, but because one decision affects the next decision. And if you don't understand how those decisions connect, it's really easy to create problems for yourself that didn't need to exist. Most people would have looked at this lot and just seen dirt. They wouldn't have seen the survey implications. They wouldn't have seen the permitting implications. They wouldn't have seen the arborist issues. They wouldn't have seen the timeline impact. They wouldn't have seen how all of those things were connected. So if you're thinking about getting into new construction development, maybe you're a flipper looking to make the jump. Maybe you're a rental investor who wants to build your own inventory. Maybe you're someone who's been watching videos like this and still feel like you don't have the full picture. I put together a training called Before You Build. It's a short orientation designed to help you understand how this business actually works before you deploy capital, where risk actually lives, what causes deals to fall apart, and some of the most common mistakes that cost first-time builders tens of thousands of dollars. If that's something you're interested in, I'll leave that link down in the description below. Now, let me show you where we are today and what happens next on this project. All right, so that's how we got here. Now let me show you guys what's gonna have to happen next. So first thing that I need is get our pre-construction meetings called in, and that's gonna be site development and our arborist pre-construction meeting. So the site development one is basically they come out and they're looking at all of our erosion control measures. This will be our silt fence, our construction entrance, and things like that. And then when we get into meet with the arborist, they're gonna be looking at all of our tree safe measures. So in this case, we're gonna be protecting this tree right here and all these trees along this left side right here. So they're gonna make us do chain link to protect this one right here, and then we'll have the orange tree safe fencing along here. So after we get all the tree safe measures in, then we'll call those in and we'll be ready to go. Then as far as getting started on this slab, we built it up before they came out and staked out the house. As you can see here, we're gonna have to do some cutting and filling because the way we built up this pad, like I said, we did it before we got the house staked up. So it's not exactly how it needs to be. We're gonna have to fill in on this side, fill in the back. We'll get it out of the front and on the side, and that'll be that. The concrete guys will do that. They'll get it exactly level and how they need it to be to actually get this slab poured. But yeah, so they'll come out here, get the form boards all set up, start digging the footings, and then after that, we'll pour that slab and everything's downhill from there. You know, I've said this in a few other videos. The most time-consuming part of a build is actually coming out of the ground, you know, getting the site cleared, build ready, and then actually getting that slab poured or that basement poured or that crawl space built and then going vertical. But once that foundation's in, we start framing, everything's downhill from there. And the funny thing about this whole thing is, of this entire process, the hardest part isn't actually construction. It's everything that happens before construction. You see, when most people look at a project, they usually focus on the thing that's right in front of them. And in this case, for this project, that would have been the dirt. But the dirt wasn't really the problem, right? The dirt affected the survey affected the site plan affected the permit affected the timeline. Everything was connected, and that was the real challenge on this project. Not because solving any one problem was impossible, but because solving one before another would have created an even bigger problem later. You see, in development, you're rarely ever managing one problem. You're managing a chain of problems. A successful outcome comes down to whether you can identify that chain early enough to navigate it. That's all I got. If you guys found value in this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.